thank you all for coming to this divine and holy engagement, this lecture. This particular lecture is going to be called Cosmic Consciousness, the cosmic consciousness of nation building. And the reason I'm calling it that is because it's one thing for the last few lectures I've been dealing with a lot of political issues and a lot of economic issues as they relate to nation building. So this is going to be a lecture where I deal directly with the inner consciousness and the ascension of an individual into a level of thinking and a level of interpersonal growth where they evolve into nation building. Because it's not just an economic or a political thing. It's about the development of the real development of human beings. So at some point in this lecture, I do want to fully develop and go deeper into that particular idea. But I want to start off talking about a very pertinent issue. Minister Farrakhan has spoken recently at, I think it was the Day of Atonement, or it might be some unique or particular lecture that he was doing just as a special lecture. I don't know. I'm taking it that it was the Day of Atonement. But in this particular lecture, according to the Chicago Defender, one of our newspapers here in Chicago, for the people that are here and aren't here, Chicago Defender newspapers, a newspaper that touch on a lot of black issues, that deal with things that are going on within the black community and political issues that affect the black people. It is a very old paper and very consistent. But I don't read a lot of newspapers of any sort. But this brother bought me this newspaper because he felt like it's pertinent. And what's pertinent to the people is pertinent to me. So I had to look at this article.
Yes, sir.
Where it says Farrakhan to expand the Nation of Islam membership. Now he's going to expand the membership. That means he's going to make some type of people who weren't members of the nation.
Tell it, bro.
But I'll begin to read the article by Stephanie Gadlin, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. You have to forgive me if I destroyed your name, but I'm reading it as I may. It says, as the message of change resonates through America, the African American Muslim community may be in line for a change of its own. The African American Muslim community, okay? That's when the Nation of Islam will reportedly extend its membership to whites. It will extend its membership to whites. It will extend its membership to whites.
This is alarming.
Hispanics, Asians, and other ethnic groups under the leadership of Minister Louis Farrakhan. The announcement took place on Sunday when Farrakhan hosted a special dedication service at the Southside Worship Center of Mas Mariam. Now, this is interesting that he's expanding the membership of the nation to whites. I think Khalid Muhammad is rolling over in his grave at this particular moment. Literally. I think that people are like-minded who are really on black nation building. Same thing. Oh, that's even worse. The same thing, there are people who are really on black nation building are really challenged by this. And a lot is going to come from this particular move that Minister Farrakhan made. Now, I know that Minister Farrakhan is most likely evolving himself to somewhat as a universal spiritual leader. That maybe he feels that his evolution of teaching black nationalism, that he's grew to a level that before he transcends and leaves the earth, and I'm only speculating, that he wants to rise himself to a level of universal spiritual leadership for people of all nations. And don't get me wrong, people of all different nations and nationalities do need spiritual leadership. No question about it. The world is in time for leadership no more than it has ever been. So spiritual leadership is necessary for people of all races. No problem there. And Farrakhan has seen the experiences that he had or whatever he's went through made him feel that it's time for him to evolve to that particular level of spiritual leadership. Now, I'm not arguing against that. And if that's the position that he chooses to play, I have nothing against him as an individual choosing to play that particular position. That position is somewhat of like the Dalai Lama or some other spiritual guru of another nationality playing a universal role and leading as a world leader.
Yes, sir.
But that doesn't cover up the need the significance, the relevance, unavoidably, of black nationalism. We must build a strong and powerful black nation, without a doubt. And we cannot forsake the specific need for building a black nation for the desire for universal improvement. We cannot do that. So, can they happen simultaneously? We'll see. When we got people out here like Minister Farrakhan saying that, well, I'll just lead all the people. We'll see if it can happen simultaneously. But whether it can happen simultaneously or not, we cannot forsake the need, the specific need for black nationalism. A nation specifically set up for us, of what it talked about in the program, in the back of the final call, of us having our own separate nation, separate from the Europeans. We still must have that, and we must set that up without question, without doubt. So, whether he wants to be a spiritual leader, I'm not really going to judge or condemn him or get caught up into that conversation, because it's a sidetrack from what we really need to be doing, which is black nation building, without a doubt. Now, I predicted, I've always known Farrakhan to be somewhat of an individual who likes to capitalize off controversy, who likes to create these big bangs in the media in order to continue to project himself into the opinions of other people, into the eyesight, into the vision of other people. So, to me, it's been consistent. He comes with the Million Man March. Then after he comes with the Million Man March, what do we do next after the Million Man March? Things slow down a little bit. Nothing's happening.
Yes, sir.
Then he has a near-death experience. He comes out of the deathbed, and there's a big rise in his following.
Tell it.
Then he gets sick again. And so happen of getting sick again, he happens to get well to be able to make Savior's Day. Now, the first time he got sick, when he came back, he put out the Knowledge of God and Self series. I know, because I was there sitting in the audience. And the crowds for this particular lecture were all around the block to hear the minister speak after he had come back from his near-death experience. So then he went on from there to have another one. This was the last one he had, I believe it was 2007, if I'm correct. He had Savior's Day, and he was sick, and it was all on the news. Minister Farrakhan is about to die. They're picking new leadership for the Nation of Islam. This is what they said on the news. Then all of a sudden, at Savior Day, he comes back out and speaks. Now, how do you go from a near death to speaking a 5-hour lecture in Detroit? How do you do it? You was on your deathbed, and now you're speaking a 5-hour lecture in Detroit. Now I go to ask myself, is that the miracle of Allah, or is that particular strategized hype? I ask myself, which one it is, I really don't know, because I was not there. But it seems quite interesting that he came and spoke 5 hours after being on his deathbed. Now, I saw the Al Jazeera interview, I believe that it was, or it was an interview with Don Lemon or whatever at the release of this DVD. I will release that a bit of that interview so you can see, where Farrakhan talks so dramatically about the issues that he was having with his prostrate, and he spoke about it so graphically, as though he was capitalizing off the atrocity of this, the tragedy of this circumstance, and how he survived this procedure and everything they had to do and how terrible this. I won't go into it, but I will play it at the time that I release this DVD. So what I'm saying all that to say is, Farrakhan has always been the type of individual that capitalizes off anything he can to continue to project himself in the media. Now, I begin to ask myself, if this is what he is doing, is this nation building or is this Farrakhanism? Farrakhanism can go on, but what about nation building? Farrakhan can be a world leader. Farrakhan can be a great man in the eyes of the world. But what about the black nation? So, if he decided to use this circumstance controversially to say, I'm going to let Europeans in and just keep shocking people on a massive level, because we need another shock. Now, We can see the man's healthy. There's no more Million Man marches coming. The numbers declined every time they try to have a new one. What's next? Let's let all the people in. So to me, it's very controversial. And they capitalize off controversy because that is what Hollywood is about. And it's very likely that what Farrakhan may do, and like I said, these are just the philosophies and the opinions of King Noble. That's it. What Farrakhan might do is, after he let the Europeans in, a few years later, he might come back and say, well, now since I let them in, I'm going back to the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. I know from letting them in that the white man is the devil. And we're going back to that old time nation and bring all the followers back in that left, because there's going to be a lot of dissension and separation in the Nation of Islam is due to Farrakhan making this decision, because people are not going to willingly give up black nationalism. But I'm going to tell you that you was not on black nationalism anyway. You won't, if Farrakhan changes to letting all people into the nation, he wouldn't even be changing. Because it was never black nationalism. It was black corporatization. You understand the point I'm making? Sure. It was corporate, which is why you have Farrakhan on BET magazine in Ebony. This is a corporate thing. I mean, he was at one event talking about Pepsi, and it was being supported by Pepsi. We know that these pops and the acid is killing people. We know that these drinks, these soft drinks, are from the devil. But he was up there with Pepsi and BET and Ebony. I said, come on, what are you doing? And Jet. So he's out in Hollywood. This is a Hollywood thing. So you was never, if you was ever supporting that, you was supporting Hollywood in the first place. You was letting that fool you. So he's not changing from nation building. How much of nation building was that to begin with in the first place? We've been telling you with the distribution of our DVD ministry that if you want to get more into nation building, you have to get away from instituting the Europeans' customs, the Europeans' ideologies,
Break it down, bro.
and the Europeans' religiosity.
Break it down.
We must loose ourselves of these things. We must get rid of them.
Tell it.
We must get rid of his Quran
Tell it.
and give it back to the Arab who needed it. We must give them back their Bible because it was Babil. We must give them back everything. Give them back all of his stuff. And come back into an African consciousness of who we really are. Become really Blackocentric. But we got to give him his stuff back. And if we're still trying to use his stuff and argue about his stuff and be with his stuff one moment and against his stuff the next, we're not ready for nation building. The only nation that's going to be built with his stuff is his nation. We got to come up with our own stuff. As the gods that created the universe 76 trillion years ago. Let's create another universe out of nothingness. Let's create another universe out of now. Since we are the gods, since we created all this, well, let's create it all over. Let's create it now. Because the now is all that exists. So we got to give the white man back all of his stuff. And if we're holding on to it and using it and instituting it, that's not nation building. So he's not turning from nation building. He's becoming more of what he always was. Y'all know what I'm saying? He's now beginning to magnify the position that he actually existed in. I said, wait a minute. And I said this the other day. And this is no disrespect to any brothers in the Nation of Islam or any sincere individuals that try to be a part of that or aspire to that, to actually nation build and change the condition of our community and involve themselves in higher individuals. But I said, if the nation building was a black nation that teach that the black man is God, this is what they teach, and that the white man is the devil, emphatically, then, and the nation has an army, of FOI, Fruit of Islam, that is supposed to ultimately protect the black nation. Not just Minister Farrakhan's house and not the mosque, but protect the black nation as a whole. The original man maker of the original man maker and owner of the planet Earth, that this nation was supposed to protect those people from the devil. Then you tell me, how many devils have been killed? And how many black people have been killed since?